Welcome back to the most unprofessional sports channel on YouTube. Welcome back to Sofa Chair Sports. I'm your host, Zach Zuckerberg Burkle. Here with my coach today, Aaron. Go and say hi.
Uh,
Alright, please make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy our content. Other than that, let's go ahead and get into it. So, in this video, we'll be doing another tier maker for NFL free agency. This time, we'll be looking at the pass catcher positions. This will include all wide receivers and tight ends. Excuse me, that are due to hit free agency this upcoming offseason. And whether we think they're going to get a big payday, settle for a smaller deal than they would prefer, get franchise tagged, or maybe even walk from their organization altogether. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So, let's go ahead and get started looking at these pass catchers. We'll be starting off with the wide receivers with our first entrant, Michael Pittman Jr. of the Indianapolis Colts, who I personally expect to get a big payday. I think he finally took that next step towards, being a premier wide receiver in the NFL. Showed that he can be potentially a number one target for a playoff caliber team like the Indianapolis Colts could be with Anthony Richardson coming back. So, yeah, I expect them to show him the money.
he's either getting a big payday or he's getting tagged. Now's the time to do it while you've got Richardson on his rookie deal. And you kind of saw with Jonathan Taylor, they kind of gave him that extension that he was looking for.
Took a little long, but yeah.
Now would be the time.
Yeah. Yeah, they can afford it right now, so why not? Next on the list, we got wide receiver from Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Super Bowl winning Mike Evans, who all signs point to probably walking. I know the Chiefs have been tied to maybe being interested with him, which I really hope is not true, because I don't think we should spend money on Mike Evans when we need to bring back Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed, as well as others. But I don't think he's going to be in a Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniform next year. I don't think the chemistry between him and Baker Mayfield was as strong as they would have liked. Baker seemed to prefer some of the other guys, like Chris Godwin, even Scotty Miller to a degree. Him and Mike Evans just didn't quite seem to be on the same page at times, and you saw that in the playoffs with a couple of those missed throws downfield. So I don't think he'll be back in Tampa next year. What do you think?
I think it'd be, if they can manage it cap wise, smart to bring him back. I mean, he hasn't had a year less than 1,000 yards receiving.
Right.
So that's just a good guy to have around. But if they're looking to maybe add or replace some holes in that defense, then they might have to let him walk.
Yeah. And I know they've got some pieces on that defense like Antoine Winfield, Levante David, Devin White. I think all three of those guys are up for new contracts as well. So a lot of things to think about over in Tampa Bay. And on top of all that, you got Baker Mayfield, who should be getting an extension as well. So next we got T. Higgins, one of two Cincinnati Bengals receivers on this list. Probably the number two guy over in Cincinnati when Jamar Chase is healthy. Could easily be a number one, and I think he proved that last year when Jamar Chase got hurt. He could be a number one if he needed to be. And with that being said, I don't think Cincinnati's going to be able to afford him. So I think he ends up playing somewhere else next year.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. I mean, if he's the number two behind Chase, you would assume that they're going to try and bring Chase back, especially with the chemistry Burrow has with, you know, chemistry and history
Mm-hmm.
that those two have together. Um, yeah, and they still got Boyd, right? So
So Boyd
that's
is Boyd is the other receiver. I was actually going to go into
or
him next. They have Chase. They have Chase for now.
oh
He's
yeah, yeah,
he's due for an
yeah.
extension, I think, next year. Um, they brought Higgins and Boyd in the same draft. So my personal opinion, I think they actually keep Boyd, make him the number two with Chase, because I think he'll be the more affordable one, having been the third guy these last like 3 seasons or whatever. I don't
Mm.
think he's going to command as high of a price tag, and so I think between the two, they'll be able to afford Boyd, but not Higgins. So they'll miss out on Higgins, but hopefully they can keep Boyd. Um, um, Moving out of Cincinnati, let's go ahead and take a look at Calvin Ridley. Had been suspended one full season for gambling, and then got traded to the Jaguars during the suspension or right after the suspension, whatever it was, where he had ups and downs. Don't think he quite fit like they anticipated he would down there in Jacksonville, opposite of the other guy whose name escapes me right now. Um, so yeah, I think he walks, but he's kind of a weird one. I'm not sure.
I think it was just kind of a weird year there in Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Lawrence dealing with, injuries, especially later in the season.
Right.
Um, yeah, I don't know what really their other options are. I could see. I just don't know how much money he's going to be asking for. You know,
Yeah, that's the other
I
weird
could see
thing.
him settling. I could see him settling.
We'll go ahead and
I
move
wouldn't be
on.
surprised anyway between settling and walking.
Yeah, I think it's going to be between the. I mean, obviously, I don't think he's going to get the big payday. I don't think he's good enough for them to franchise tag. So he's either going to get something, you know, mid level, or he's probably going to walk and try to get something big somewhere else. Next we got Hollywood Marquise Brown, Marquise Hollywood Brown, whatever you want to put first. Um, Chemistry with Kyler Murray wasn't exactly what we all hoped it would be after being traded from Baltimore. Would be an interesting deep threat in in a scheme like Kansas City's, but I just don't think Kansas City's going to be willing to pay the money that it takes to get him. But I mean, speaking from like an Arizona perspective, I think they're kind of in full rebuild mode, and I don't think Marquise Brown fits the rebuild.
I think people kind of have to remember that they didn't really have an off season with him, right? He wasn't. He got traded
Let me check.
for the draft last year, right?
That might be
He got
true.
traded. He got traded during the draft, so he never really had an off season. He didn't have a training camp with Kyler, so they just kind of got thrust in there later in the season when Kyler got healthy and played. So I could see them maybe giving it
So
another shot
he was
and
traded.
settling.
He was traded during the 2022 draft, not the 2023
Mm,
draft. So he's been there for a couple years. Um, yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting with him. Darnell Mooney, probably the second best receiver in Chicago behind DJ Moore. Um, really comes down to I think what does Chicago do with those two picks that they got up in the beginning of the first round? Do they take a Marvin Harrison or Roma Dunze or Malik Neighbors or even surprise if people take a Brian Thomas Jr. with one of those two picks? Or do they maybe try to shore up that offensive line with maybe a Joe Alt? I would like to think they go offensive line and maybe settle with Mooney, keep him around. I think he's a solid number two behind DJ Moore. DJ Moore's a really good number one. You got Cole Kmet at tight end. I think you're really starting to build a good pass catching core around either Justin Fields or Caleb Williams, whichever you decide.
I think they settle as well. I don't think that necessarily excludes them from going out and getting a receiver in the draft.
Sure, sure,
Um, to help out whatever quarterback they decide to go with.
yeah,
But he's definitely a solid number two,
really good number
and he'll be a
three.
really good number three.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
So that could be a really dangerous receiving core
Yep.
if they decide to sign him.
All right, next we've got DJ Chark, receiver. You kind of threw out there as somebody you wouldn't mind the Chiefs maybe taking a look at, lower end on the receipt on the market as far as like probably cost goes. And then on the other hand, now Carolina doesn't have a whole lot of pass catchers, so I think it's very reasonable that they maybe decide to kind of stick with him, give him like a, maybe a 3-year deal to just kind of stick around with Bryce Young and try to build some rapport down there in Carolina as maybe the number two guy if they draft somebody this year. Because you would think even if they do get somebody with their second round pick, probably going to be a little bit more potential there than you have with DJ Chark.
Yeah, I don't know what the whole deal with Thielen is. Um, Got to remember he's still there.
Mine's also like
So I could,
34.
yeah, yeah, that's the thing. If you want like a veteran guy kind of down there with Bryce Young to kind of go through this rebuild that they're in,
Mm-hmm.
um, Shark could do it. I could also see them letting him walk and just full rebuild, you
Yeah.
know, because that offense was nothing to write home about last year.
No, it was very bad. Very bad indeed. Um, let's go ahead and take a look at Curtis Samuel, one of three receivers over in Washington that kind of made some noise the last few years, and Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and then Curtis Samuel being the oldest of the three, I believe. Um, Kind of would be nice to see him go out and finally, have a solid, decent quarterback, NFL caliber quarterback thrown into him for the first time in his career. Um, for his sake, I hope he walks. That's all I'm going to say. I just hope he walks and gets out of that dumpster fire that is Washington. Even if they do bring in like a Drake May or Jaden Daniels, it's still a dumpster fire.
I could see him getting a big payday somewhere else. I
Really?
don't.
Okay.
I Yeah, yeah. I don't think, which would be walk. Um,
I guess that's true, yeah.
yeah. I have no idea what that commander's that new regime there is is gonna do. I think it kind of surprised everybody when they traded away Sweat and Young
Mm-hmm.
mid-season.
They have a ton of cap space. They could easily replace Curtis Samuel with a better version and like a T. Higgins, or if they
Younger,
really
better
want,
version.
yeah, or if they really want to break the bank on like a Michael Pittman. Um, but I just with Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin already over there, I just don't see the. I hope they spend their money elsewhere to kind of more round that team out a little bit better because they don't need three Pro Bowl receivers if they don't have a college level quarterback throwing them the football.
Yeah.
Um, let's go ahead and take a look at Michael Thomas. He's had a fall from grace the last few seasons. Really expendable as far as it goes in New Orleans. I feel like at this point, I think they would only keep him around for the vibes, just kind of as like a nostalgia factor. But I expect him to walk. I think he'll ask for too much money. I don't think he's worth a big contract anymore, but I think he'll try to get it. At the end of the day, I don't think anyone's gonna end up paying him that, so he'll probably end up having to settle somewhere. I just don't think it's gonna be in New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a good young talent with Olave going into what is third year, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
this coming year.
Something like that.
Um, I think now's kind of the time where you start maybe turning over that offense. You saw them bring in Derek Carr. Um, yeah, and kind of Thomas is one of the few remaining pieces from that old regime on that offensive side of the ball. So I think I think they do kind of look to replace him with um, someone younger, more uh, more well, that will bring more of a or provide more of a role than kind of what he does at the moment.
Yep. Got Gabe Davis, who has had his ups and his downs throughout his tenure in Buffalo.
You just
Uh,
love those Buffalo roller coaster references.
I mean, he has though. He's had his like that's kind of the story of every Buffalo player the last like half decade is ups and downs. Um, he's shown flashes from time to time of being a potential number one wide receiver. And then he's also shown flashes of
Against the
being
Chiefs.
he should be against the Chiefs specifically. And then he's also shown flashes where it looks like he's lucky if he's the number four on a team. Um, I would like to think he goes somewhere else and kind of rediscovers himself, whatever that means. Uh, he kind of finds somewhere where he can just kind of reset because I think when you're playing for a team that always ends up coming up second best, it's got to wear on you. Um, just being up there in Buffalo, where you're always the redheaded stepchild of the league, where you're just not quite
Hey, there's nothing wrong with being a stepchild.
more redheaded, right?
No, that's terrible. Those are
Yeah.
the worst people.
But all jokes aside, I do think Gabe Davis is gone. I don't think they can afford him. And I think that's best for both sides because I think they're expecting a little too much out of Gabe Davis right now. And I think Gabe Davis has really lost some of that confidence that he had early on. So I think he walks.
I think the smart move is try and sign him and move on from
Stephon.
Stephon
I
Diggs.
agree, but I don't think they will.
But yeah, I don't think they will. I think the chemistry between Allen and Diggs is too important to try and break that up. You don't.
Yeah.
I don't think they want to risk pissing Josh Allen off. So I do think ultimately, uh, Gabe Davis walks.
Yep. Next we got Odell Beckham Jr. One of the
He's going
most
to become a journeyman, hadn't he?
he has throughout the last few years, from New York to Cleveland to LA, now to Baltimore. Been around the league a little bit now at this point of his career. Shows flashes from time to time of the old OBJ and that he can still be, maybe a clutch factor down the stretch of some games. But definitely not the reliable, consistent target that he used to be during the Eli Manning era in New York. Um, I'd be shocked if Baltimore brings him back at this age. I think if I were Baltimore, I would be looking to get younger at the receiving core, not older. And by holding on to an OBJ while trading Marquise Brown a few years ago, that just seems counterintuitive.
I mean, they've got Zay Flowers, who's a young guy. So OBJ, whether they want to designate him one or two, I don't think that really matters. I think he could be a good fit there again. Um, I think I read that he was almost a Jet last year, so I could see him walking and going to the Jets, playing with Aaron Rodgers
Mm-hmm.
this year. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he settled or if he walked and ended up with the Jets. One of those two.
Yeah, just to even it out, I'll put him up there at settles then. Um, we got Kendrick Bourne, not super notable player. Um, the Patriots don't really have anybody though, so I kind of expect them to just keep him because why not? They spent a high draft pick on him. Might as well kind of ride it out right
He
now
was
because there's nothing
one of their
else
best
to do.
receivers.
Yeah, and there's,
Yeah,
I mean,
I was
it's
thinking of
yeah, it's not a big enough deal to where I feel like they're gonna. I don't think he's gonna ask for too much money, um, to where they're gonna let him walk, and I think they can just they need some sort of consistency on the offensive side of the football, and I think just it starts with keeping the players multiple years. Um, got
started with a good quarterback.
starts with a good coach. KJ Osborne, kind of third fiddle over there in Minnesota with the emergence of not just who's the other guy? Just the rookie from this year. Oh my goodness, like Jordan Addison.
Addison.
Yeah, Addison. With the emergence of Addison over in Minnesota, he's kind of become the third wheel behind him and Jefferson. So you kind of expect him to kind of be on his way out, in my opinion, of Minnesota. I don't think they see him as a important enough piece to break the bank on. And I think he'll be able to
So
find more
we're
money
gonna
elsewhere.
re-sign Justin Jefferson eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in our earlier video, we said that Kirk Cousins is probably gone. If they're not going to bring Kirk back, I can't imagine they would want to bring KJ Osborne back just to be the third receiver on a middling team. Josh Reynolds, playoff hero and playoff, I guess
Zero.
zero. Yeah, there you go. Playoff hero from playoff hero to playoff zero. Making some great catches for the Lions to get them to the NFC Championship game, and then dropping quite possibly the most crucial one in the NFC Championship game that allowed the 49ers to get back into it and make their way to the Super Bowl. On the wrong side of 30, I think Detroit needs to look to get younger at the receiving core. Um, Try to build around Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta. Maybe go out and get somebody in the draft, even because you've kind of already shored up that running back game this past year. So yeah, I think Josh Reynolds is gone.
Yeah, this is another one I could see going either way. I mean, it's not like I don't think he's going to be asking for crazy money.
Right.
So I could see them bringing him back just kind of for depth sake and being an okay number two, or
Yeah.
or number three for whoever they bring in. Um, I'm just not sure.
And Nelson Aguilar, I think words come out that he's signed a 1 year extension with the Ravens. I don't know. Regardless, I don't see him go. There's not a desire for Nelson Aguilar out there, so I don't think he's going anywhere. He'll probably it says right here at least that he re-signed for 1 year, so I'm not sure if that's
Hmm.
true or not. But yeah, I would assume he's probably sticking in Baltimore especially if that's true, obviously. So moving on to tight ends with our number one, we got Dalton Schultz, who kind of emerged as a secret weapon for C.J. Stroud down there in Houston, especially once Tank Dell and Nico Collins started suffering some injuries late in the year. I think he's a good piece for that Houston offense, and I think they keep him for at least a few years, just to kind of be a reliable uh, target for C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, he's good. He's from Dallas, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what their cap looks like, but I could see them either giving him a big payday or tagging him because they're so young everywhere else.
Yeah, I just don't
Using
know if
that money to
he's.
to keep him around for now.
Yeah, I just don't know if he's worth a big contract at his age because I think he's either on the wrong side of 30 or he's close to 30. But I know he's not any spring chicken by any means. So,
I could type.
um,
He's 27.
okay, so younger than I thought. Maybe yeah, I wouldn't hate a big payday then for him. I don't know if they'll tag him because they don't typically tag tight ends, do they?
I don't know who else they would tag.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Next we've got yeah, this is Hunter Henry. I can't tell which one's which. We got Hunter Henry, tight end
Not
for
racist.
the New England Patriots. They love their tight ends in New England. Of course, they do have a new head coach now, so maybe that changes. Um, but between him and Gasicki, I feel like they only keep one of those two. And I think Gasicki's proven he can be more healthy. Hunter Henry's had a lot of injury issues throughout the years. So I've got Gasicki settling while Hunter Henry walks. What are your thoughts?
Um, yeah, there's only 1 year difference. Gesicki's 28, Henry's 29. Um, I think Gesicki's kind of overall like the better overall player.
I agree. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I agree. I think Gesicki settles and Henry walks.
Hmm.
Although I wouldn't be surprised if they both settled.
Yeah, I could see them
If I'm
both coming
honest.
back. I don't know why they would bring both of them back, but they signed them both in one off season, so I could see them re-signing them both in one off season. Gerald Everett, tight end for the Los Angeles Chargers, kind of been a disappointment from my understanding. I think they kind of thought he'd be a little bit more valuable in the pass catching game, and he was kind of kind of non-existent this past year. So, um, especially if the Chargers climb up and take Brock Bowers, I think Everett walks.
Don't they have another tight end who was doing really well last year?
They do, yeah. He kind of took over Everett's job.
Palmer? Is his name Palmer?
Jordan Palmer, that sounds familiar. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I could see him walking.
yeah, I think Palmer took his job. I think Everett got hurt or something, and then Palmer started playing. Noah Fant from Denver. Really solid potential. Not hasn't shown anything super special yet, but with all that being said, I think the Broncos see value in him and keep him around as their tight end for at least the next few years.
He ain't no Alberto, I know that. They've never traded that guy away.
We want Alberto.
Um, yeah, Denver's just another one of those weird situations where Sean Payton didn't really bring any of these guys in, so who
Yeah,
knows what he plans to do with Russell Wilson and some of these other guys, but um, I think arguably a lot of them were on the trading block until they kind of went on that win streak last year.
yeah,
Um, I could see them settling with him, and then if things don't really go well again this season, maybe looking to trade away some of those guys and getting some draft capital.
yeah. Next, we got Austin Hooper. I don't think he played much for the Raiders this past year, or he got hurt or something. Was the starting tight end on that Falcons team, that 28-3 Falcons team, the notorious 28-3 Falcons team. And ever since then, just kind of been bouncing around the league from team to team, just trying to hold a job. Just because the Raiders don't have any other options, I see him settling, and maybe the Raiders keep him around and see if maybe they can get something out of him. I don't know. Like play wise.
Yeah, I mean, I think tight ends kind of conversely to receivers, um, teams find a little bit more value in keeping them around because their price range isn't as drastic as receivers
Right.
are.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's a little more rare to see a good free agent tight end than it is a good free agent receiver.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's just kind of the reason we think a lot more of these tight ends are going to get signed as opposed
Right.
to letting them
Walking.
walk.
Yeah. With that being, I mean Robert Tanyan. I don't see him sticking around just because they got Cole Kmet now, who they seem
Yeah,
committed to as being the guy at the tight end position in
he's older
Chicago.
too.
Yeah, Robert Tanyan's been in the league for a few years. I think he's in his late 20s, early 30s. So yeah, I don't see them keeping him around. Uh, and then that brings us to the two Bengals tight ends to wrap up the video. We got Irv Smith Jr. and who's this other guy?
Drew Sample.
Drew Sample. Yep, that's right. Thank you. I mentioned it in our power rankings video that the Bengals need to go out and look for that dude at tight end. I don't think either of these ones are them, but I do think that Irv Smith Jr. showed some flashes. And I wouldn't mind seeing him stick around in Cincinnati. as well as Drew Sample. I think they keep them both, despite what
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna be asking for crazy money.
Yeah, and I think they could use all the pass catchers they can get, assuming they lose one, if not both, of T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. So, we may see a different kind of offense next year with the Cincinnati Bengals, maybe incorporating tight ends a little bit more, because I don't see those two going anywhere. I see them bringing them both back just to kind of keep that stability for Joe Burrow coming off the injury. So,
Yeah.
all right, well, in case you got anything else, Aaron, I think that'll do it for this episode of the most unprofessional sports channel on YouTube, Swivel Chair Sports. I've been your host, Zach Circleberg Merkel, here with the ghost today. Aaron, go and say bye, Aaron.
Bye.
All right, please make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. Other than that, deuces.